The Scandalous and Fascinating Life of Henry James Fonda, 10 Shocking Facts. Henry James Fonda, a celebrated American actor and father of the iconic actress Jane Fonda, left a legacy not only for his impressive film career but also for his complex personal life. Known for his portrayals of morally upright characters on screen, Fonda's real life was filled with contradictions, including strained family relationships, marital struggles, and controversial political views. Here are 10 scandalous, shocking, and fascinating facts about Fonda, revealing both his private struggles and public triumphs. Fact number 1. Troubled youth, a complex relationship with his father. Henry James Fonda was born on May 16, 1905, in Grand Island, Nebraska, to William Brace Fonda and Herberta Janes. His father, a printer by trade, upheld strict and conservative values that often clashed with young Henry's emerging artistic inclinations. The elder Fonda's harsh discipline and emotional aloofness made it difficult for Henry to establish a close relationship with him. Seeking solace from the rigidity of his upbringing, Fonda turned to acting in his late teens after watching a play at the Omaha Community Playhouse. His first marriage in 1931 to actress Margaret Sullivan was brief and turbulent, setting a pattern of marital instability. Sullivan, herself a complicated figure struggling with mental health, divorced Fonda after just 2 years, citing their inability to connect emotionally. Over the course of his life, Fonda married 5 times, with his relationships often marked by tension and tragedy. His second wife, Frances Ford Seymour, whom he married in 1936, took her own life in 1950 after a struggle with depression, leaving a deep scar on the family, particularly on their children Jane and Peter Fonda. Number 2. Controversial political views, a left-leaning Hollywood star. Despite his Midwestern upbringing, Fonda's political views veered decidedly to the left, which stood in contrast to the more conservative culture of Hollywood at the time. A vocal supporter of Franklin D. Roosevelt, Fonda campaigned for the president's New Deal policies during the 1930s and 40s. His outspoken opposition to fascism and war brought him into conflict with Hollywood figures who feared communism's spread in the wake of World War II. During the 1940s and 1950s, when anti-communist sentiment reached its peak, Fonda's friendships with figures like Dalton Trumbo, a screenwriter who was blacklisted during the Red Scare, sparked suspicions. Although there was no concrete evidence linking Fonda to communist activities, the rumors persisted and led to tensions within the film industry. His advocacy extended to supporting civil rights movements, a stance that polarized public opinion further, with some accusing him of being a Hollywood radical. However, Fonda remained steadfast, once stating, "I'm not a communist, but I refuse to live in fear because of my beliefs." Number 3. A secretive private life, infidelity and marital struggles. Henry Fonda's reputation as a stoic and morally upright figure on screen was often at odds with his private life, which was riddled with secrets, affairs, and marital woes. His second marriage to Frances Ford Seymour ended in heartbreak when she died by suicide in 1950, a traumatic event that haunted Fonda and strained his relationships with his children. He was married to Susan Blanchard from 1950 to 1956, who was 22 years his junior, and this relationship also ended in divorce. His fourth marriage to Afterra Franchetti, an Italian aristocrat, saw its share of public scrutiny, especially as rumors of infidelity dogged Fonda. Hollywood insiders whispered about affairs with actresses like Bette Davis and Margaret Sullivan, though these were never confirmed. His last marriage, to Shirley May Adams in 1965, seemed more stable, lasting until his death in 1982, but Fonda's restless nature often led to difficulties in maintaining commitment, casting a shadow over his otherwise heroic public persona. Number 4. Uncomfortable fatherhood, tensions with his famous children. The relationship between Henry Fonda and his children, Jane and Peter, was often fraught with challenges. Jane Fonda recalled the emotional distance between her and her father, particularly during her formative years. "When I was a teenager, my father would send my stepmother to convince me that I needed to slim down," she shared in a candid interview. "I was forbidden from wearing short skirts because they thought I looked fat in them." These remarks reflected the underlying strain in their father-daughter relationship, and Jane's subsequent battle with bulimia was, in part, a result of this pressure. Their differences reached a peak during Jane's controversial anti-war activism in the 1960s and 1970s, which Henry did not support, especially her infamous trip to North Vietnam in 1972. Nevertheless, the two found some resolution later in life, especially while working together on the film On Golden Pond in 1981. The movie, which explored a complex father-daughter dynamic, provided a poignant reflection of their own relationship. The role earned Henry Fonda his first and only Academy Award, a crowning achievement that came just a year before his death. Number 5. The Unseen Battle, Depression Behind the Screen. Fonda's struggles with depression were an open secret among his closest friends and family, though rarely discussed publicly. Following the suicide of his second wife, Frances, Fonda often experienced bouts of deep melancholy. His children noted in interviews how he would retreat from them for weeks at a time, shutting himself off emotionally. While on set, he would mask his inner turmoil behind a veneer of professionalism, yet some of his most critically acclaimed roles, such as in The Grapes of Wrath, 1940, and 12 Angry Men, 1957, carried an authenticity that seemed to draw from his own personal battles. His daughter Jane reflected, "I think my father's sadness came from something deeply rooted. It was as if he carried the weight of the world." Fonda's friends, including fellow actor James Stewart, acknowledged that his emotional struggles made him both more vulnerable and more relatable in his craft. Number 6. The Affairs and Rumors, Hollywood's Open Secret. Fonda's reputation as a faithful family man was complicated by numerous rumors of affairs throughout his career. His close friendship with Margaret Sullivan during the early 1930s, even before her marriage to director William Wyler, led to speculation about a romantic involvement. Similarly, his on-screen chemistry with Bette Davis in Jezebel, 1938, ignited rumors of a possible affair, though neither party ever confirmed this. Despite such speculation, Fonda kept his private life guarded, preferring to maintain an image of discretion. His final marriage to Shirley May Adams in 1965 seemed to offer more stability, but the legacy of his infidelities had already left its mark on his children, who would later struggle with their own relationships. Number 7. War hero or propaganda tool? Fonda's military service. Henry Fonda served in the U.S. Navy during World War II, enlisting in 1942 and eventually earning the rank of lieutenant junior grade. Stationed on the USS Satterley, a destroyer in the Pacific, he saw action and was awarded the Bronze Star for bravery under fire. Though he was praised for his patriotism, some critics speculated that his military service also served to bolster his public image. His decision to avoid appearing in wartime propaganda films, however, demonstrated his refusal to exploit the war for personal gain. Fonda later reflected, "I didn't want to just be a face on a poster. I needed to be out there doing my part." His swift return to acting after the war did not silence the critics entirely, but his dedication to service was nonetheless a key part of his life story. Number 8. A Tainted Reputation, Rumors of Communism. The political climate during the 1940s and 50s was rife with fear over communist infiltration, and Fonda's friendships with blacklisted writers such as Dalton Trumbo led some to suspect his own leanings. While he was never summoned to testify before the House Un-American Activities Committee, WAC, his name surfaced in the whispers surrounding Hollywood's Red Menace. Director Elia Kazan, who did testify, noted that Fonda's political views were often more about justice and civil liberties than Marxist ideology, but the association with leftist figures nevertheless tainted his reputation among some colleagues. Number 9. The lingering impact of a lynching incident. In 1919, as a 14-year-old boy, Henry Fonda witnessed a racially charged lynching in Omaha, Nebraska, which left a profound and lasting impact on him. The horrific event occurred during the Omaha race riot when an African-American man, Will Brown, was brutally murdered by a mob. This harrowing experience informed Fonda's later choices in portraying characters who championed justice and stood against mob mentality, as seen in The Oxbow Incident, 1943, and 12 Angry Men, 1957. Fonda once remarked, "I saw a man die because a crowd decided it was right." That's an image that never leaves you. Number 10. A legacy of complexity, a life filled with contradictions. Henry Fonda's legacy remains one of contradictions. Despite his public image as an icon of integrity and decency, his private life told a different story, marked by troubled marriages, complicated relationships with his children, and battles with depression. His ability to bring a deep sense of authenticity to his roles was likely shaped by these personal struggles, lending a unique depth to characters like Tom Joad in The Grapes of Wrath and Juror No. 8 in 12 Angry Men. As his daughter Jane Fonda once said, "My father wasn't a perfect man, but he was a great one." And in his imperfections, there was a kind of truth that came out in his work. His life and career serve as reminders that even Hollywood's most revered figures carry burdens behind the spotlight.